everybody. Thank you so much for attending this month's Wednesday webinar. This month we have Embracing Technology in the 911 Center with Casey Rives. Towards the end of the webinar, we will share the link for you to sign up to receive a certificate. We will also be uploading the webinar to our YouTube account so you can watch the recording at any time. The foundation offers on-site and online courses, as well as third-party quality assurance services and other opportunities throughout the year. So make sure you subscribe to our newsletter, or you can check us out on Facebook. And from here, I'll let Casey take it.
Perfect. Thank you, Emily. And thank the Denise Amberly Foundation for holding these webinars. I think it's important to have a place for the 911 community to learn new things, network, and also kind of have that discussion back and forth. So I wanted to bring everyone here today to kind of talk about technology in the 911 center and public safety in general. It's something that I'm passionate about, but obviously in the last few years, we've seen a lot of change. That's also come with some hesitation with having that technology because change is scary. So I like to do this session. I've done it at a few conferences as well, kind of just touching on, what type of technology is available, why we're seeing such fast movement and change in technology in 911, and how we can kind of help our teams embrace it. So I'll just go over a few different, technology solutions that can help our 911 agencies succeed and, address the challenges and problems that we're seeing today. And, I'm always available for questions afterwards. I'm not sure if the chat is on in here, but if it is, I'll try to pay attention to that as well. If I miss something, just let me know. And so just a little background on myself. I worked as a 911 call taker at Fairfax County, Virginia for about 10 years. And then in 2021, I came over to Verint and I work as a solutions consultant. And when I came over, I, like many of you, wasn't aware of all the technology that's available because we didn't see that in the 911 center. We had location services like Rapid SOS that came forth, text to 911. And then when I came over to the private sector, I was kind of amazed at all the technology that is available. And I was curious, why isn't this technology being used in 911, a place where this technology is not only something that is useful, but something that could be life-saving. So that's kind of how I got started in this. And I love working with all the different agencies and showing them what's available and answering their questions on that. I'm going to share my screen just so you guys have some visuals to look at. Make sure that it populates on here. And let's see. There we go. Make sure, can everybody see I don't know, Emily, if you can come off mute, make sure that you see the audience view of it, just because I have a few screens. Perfect. All right. So I start the story kind of talking about, 911 and where it started at and why it seems like we've had so much change, because although we kind of have to look at it as the bigger picture. So when we think about when that first 911 call was made, when law enforcement and public safety started actually using CAD platforms, and then of course when we got text to 911, there's a big gap of time. And when we started bringing this type of, advanced technology or advanced services to help the outcome of public safety and emergency response. In a way, public safety has kind of always been reactive, more so than proactive. And I think we're seeing that change in the environment today. And then of course, Rapid SOS. I was talking to Karen at Rapid SOS, and even though it was founded in 2012, we didn't really begin testing it until about 2017, and then finally implemented in 2018. And then of course today, unfortunately, many of us are still seen as administrative support, when in reality, we are the first of the first responders. And I always like to say, when we think about Rapid SOS, right, being in a 911 center before it came about, I always was like, why can I order DoorDash or Uber Eats or, rideshare, and they know exactly where I'm at, but we're not provided that same service in 911 so that we can get the right people to the right place in a timely manner. If we think about how all these different laws and technology has come into place, whether it's the Denise Amber Lee Foundation or Carrie's Law or location services, it's all because of a negative or bad outcome that happened And then we kind of thought about, hey, how can we prevent this in the future? And what can we implement to make sure this never happens again? And the biggest problem when we talk about, technology and new technology and the changing environment of 911 is that resistant to change. We have, newer call takers and dispatchers coming in, and this is all that they're going to know. So this is the norm for them. We have dispatchers, whether you've been there 3 or 5 years or 20 years, that this is a lot of change at once. Especially since the pandemic, we've experienced constant change between a revolving door of employees, changes in protocols, whether that's using backup centers or remote shifts, changes in leadership, and just a lot of new systems at once. So we often hear, there's the fear of the unknown, there's the fear that we've had constant change. And then you have someone that's always said, we've always done it this way, it's worked. But the reality is it hasn't worked. And we've seen that recently. We've seen how we're having trouble keeping people, increased burnout. And we've also seen that we have heightened citizen expectations, right? People are calling more frequently, they expect more, they want instant response, and they're not always right, but we do need to change the way that 911 operates. Why should we embrace that change? Why do we need to make it a priority to address the change in 911 technology and make sure that it's successful in our centers? So I think it was Sarah Weston at one of her speeches that she did. She said a quote that I've used frequently since, is that some people plant trees for shade that they'll never see. And I think that plays a role in implementing this technology a lot. We have the growing pains of it right now. Those of you that are in dispatch and call taking now are seeing the change and having to deal with it in real time. But we're creating a better environment for the new people coming in and the generations after us, and the overall success of our 911 agencies and centers. So, of course, we have the NG 911 standards, that increased volume of calls that are coming in. And just think about the diversity of data that we have, whether it's text and voice, video, location services, even, from different applications like Uber emergency buttons, also the increased reliability of 911. And overall, we're trying to reduce the cost of operating 911, but also being able to share the data and the systems with the other jurisdictions and agencies that are around us. And overall, one of the most important things that I speak about, when I'm doing a demo with a customer or when I'm giving a speaking session during a conference, is how this technology can help our employees. A lot of times it's only about how can this help the citizens or the surrounding jurisdictions. But at the end of the day, it's how can we help those that are behind the headset that are providing services? Because historically, we haven't done a great job at that. And we're seeing that trend with, increased burnout, and we're having issues with retention as well. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen this study here that was done showing the vacancy rates in 911 centers. And I'm sure a lot of you aren't surprised because your center is probably, experiencing the same or similar issues. I think in the last year or so, I maybe spoken to 1 or 2 centers that are fully staffed, which is hard to come by. So a lot of these centers are, enforcing mandatory overtime. I think the study estimated 70% of the centers that they interviewed were utilizing mandatory overtime to deal with staffing issues. So utilizing technology can help with that, the staffing issues, again, by helping with that mental health aspect, but also taking some of those non-emergency calls and shifting them to the right place. And also making sure that we get the right resources the first time, so we're not inundated with calls that don't need to be handled as well. So before I get into the different technology, there's a few things that I like to get out of the way first that most people, already are using and maybe just need to look at their systems and see how they can use it, what features it has, and make sure that it's ready for the change in 911. Everyone has a recorder that's capturing any data that comes in, those calls, the text messages, and a lot of times it's used as incident reconstruction to put an incident together that happened, whether it's for a FOIA request or a court case. So this is something that every center is going to have. Things that we need to make sure are that our login recorders and incident reconstruction platforms have the ability to capture multiple different methods of data, the body cam footage, photos, video, text messages, and have those flexible deployment options as well. Being able to function from anywhere. Think about the pandemic. A lot of centers were thinking of outside of the box ways to staff their centers, whether that was from backup centers or some locations were able to do work from home. So we've seen how being able to access, all your resources remotely can be an important aspect of being successful in your 911 agency. In the same hand in hand, we start talking about utilizing the big scary cloud. We're seeing a shift. I know I am in my position of agencies starting to, be more welcoming to the cloud. I think before the cloud was scary. It was the unknown. It felt like it was not safe, that information could easily be taken from there. And the reality is that it's as safe, if not safer, than on-prem solutions. And also these centers, most of the time is going to be a hybrid type solution. So we talk about, you might have radios that are going to need a recorder, et cetera, but you can still utilize the cloud for these advanced technology solutions you're using. So why is that important when we start talking about embracing technology? Is because this is one way to make it a little bit easier for your staff, but also a little bit easier to get that advanced solutions that you need at a more cost-effective way. So you're reducing the need for expensive hardware upgrades. You're also able to share the cost and data with your surrounding agencies. I'm not sure how many people here are, part of either a consolidated center or a center that is able to share that data already. But also think about things like weather-related emergencies or catastrophes, which can cause hardware damage or maybe lack of access to specific buildings. So thinking about the cloud and embracing, a hybrid type solution is something that can make sure that we're really moving in the right direction to bring technology into the 911 center at a smoother and easier rate. And this is just an example of if we stay on-prem, with hardware that's there. This was just an example of a diagram I had to do for a customer. And these are all the recorders that they had at a location, all of the hardware. So think about if the cost of that is to upgrade that, but also, make sure that it's functioning, and overall make sure that it's not going to, have any catastrophic issues during critical communications. And starting with, being successful in the 911 center and technology helping, we start with putting the right people in the seat. So we know that hiring people for 911 is a difficult task. You have a lot of people that come in, apply for the job, and it's something that they're interested in. And then they get there, they realize that it's not for everyone, that it's hard, that they didn't really understand the position, and they end up leaving, or after a year they end up leaving. I think the average dispatcher stays at the job anywhere from 2 to 4 years. I remember when I was hired at Fairfax, there were approximately 30 people in the room for the first part of the process. And during that process, I think 4 or 5 actually got up and walked out, realizing that it wasn't for them. And then after, multiple processes and testing, it got down to about 10 of us who were released from the academy, and only 3 of us stayed. So think about the amount of people and time and money that it costs to find those. So there's technology out there from different companies that provide intelligent interviewing. So you're now speeding up the process, but you're not decreasing the quality of the people. This type of technology can find the candidates from a larger pool of people. You're not limited to just your area. And it also puts into place different aspects of what the job has so that it really shows the candidates if it's right for them or not. So you're reaching more people, you're saving money, you're speeding up the process, and we're making sure that we have those quality people. Because again, especially in today's environment, it can seem like maybe we're focused on quantity, not quality, because it is so hard to find those people. But when you're talking about emergency services and the first of the first responders, it's really more important that we have quality in those seats. When I start getting into, more of the advanced technology, I like to think of it in a way of a total quality program. Historically, quality management or quality assurance as a process was thought of as a way where we just review certain calls to meet compliance or reduce liability, which of course is important. But as even the Denise Amberly Foundation shows that quality is about more than that, right? Quality is about reviewing more, finding areas where you can recognize employees. And it's time to redefine everywhere what a quality program is. It should focus on, the procedures and standards, the solutions that create a total quality sense for the entire process. That means from our dispatchers and call takers to also the outcome of the citizen. So all this technology goes into creating a quality environment and also a quality emergency response. I think that it's important to realize that we can no longer look at quality as a minimum requirement. If the minimum for a quality program was 2% call reviews, that means that if you're handling 182,000 calls a year, we can estimate that about 1,800 of those are non-compliant. But also, what else are you missing? We're missing room for training opportunities. We're also missing room for recognizing our employees for the bigger picture of what they do. So how does technology play a role in this? Again, recognizing those employees' achievements, supporting our employees through difficult calls and events, identifying when we need additional resources. How many times, and we're blind to it because it's something that we handle every day. You handle a call of, a life or death situation, whether it's a suicidal subject or a drowning, and you hang up the phone and you pick up the next phone and you don't think about what just happened. And not all, supervisors and directors in today's environment, sometimes they're also answering the call because staffing's so low, or they might not hear in a center of 30 people, every call that's taken or see every call that's taken if it was high priority. So we can utilize technology to recognize those things so that we can make sure we're supporting our employees. And again, if we talk about the minimum requirements with the more room for liability, it just goes back to what I mentioned before about the non-compliant calls. But the bigger piece of that is utilizing technology to review more calls to make sure that we're recognizing our employees and also improving our training protocols. So we're not just taking those high priority CPR calls or accident with injuries. Maybe you want to quickly review a call about a citizen complaint or a traffic violation. Those are also important to review to see where your employees are at. We can't just only recognize when they do poorly. We're not computers, right? We're human beings that are going to make mistakes. And of course, in public safety, those mistakes can cost a life. So yes, it's important to make sure that we are compliant and reducing liability. But overall, we need to remember that human behind the headset. And in such a fast-paced environment, how do we do that as being human ourselves? That's where technology comes into play. I think that technology has been also fearful of taking the place of humans, right? It's going to take our job. It's going to get rid of the need for a human under the headset behind the computer. But the reality is that that can never happen. We're always going to need people that are dispatchers and call takers. The idea is to take this technology and use it to work with your team. So it's going to work for your team. At the end of the day, the human is always in control. The human's always going to have the final say. They're always going to be doing that important work. The technology is there just to support them. So there's tons of technology I could talk about, from all sorts of companies that we're seeing pop up. But at the end of the day, there's just a few that I'm going to talk about today, so that everybody doesn't fall asleep and get sick of hearing me talk. So some of those are going to be workforce management, touch on, of course, the big key player that everyone keeps hearing about, automation, IVR, talking about those non-emergency calls, diverting them and reducing burnout. And then performance management and speech analytics kind of go hand in hand of another way of not only recognizing employees, but recognizing what calls you need to look at and trends that you're seeing as well. So staffing issues, scheduling, making sure we have the right skill set there available. It's difficult. I know even in the center I was in, which was a fairly large center, it's hard to find the time to sit down, and supervisor would have to sit down and look at how many employees were on each shift, what skill set those employees had, who was on PTO, who was on FMLA, things of that, who was in training. So these supervisors had to sit and take so much time to kind of put the puzzle pieces together. Well, when I came over to the private sector and realized, the commercial world is using applications like workforce management, I thought to myself, wow, why doesn't public safety use this? Think about, in public safety, most centers, when you're going to work for the next 5 years because you're on the same shift. So this is almost easier to use in public safety than it is in the commercial world. You're able to look at different things like trends of when you have the most call volume, or areas when you might, and be able to input how many employees you need. 4th of July, of course, you're going to get a million shots fired calls because people don't let fireworks off on 4th of July, right? So you might need more staffing that day, or maybe there's another big event. You can also make sure you're putting skill sets for different employees in these types of systems, whether they're a call taker and a police dispatcher, maybe you need a teletype operator or a fire dispatcher. So it's going to calculate all that into consideration on where you need them, when you need them, and who you need as well. What this also does is make sure that you're able to put in their different breaks, but you still have the correct staffing that you need. Tracking that time off balances and requests. So switching shifts, which most centers do, that's how a lot of us would be able to get time off. As easy as going in, selecting the employee you want to swap shifts with, putting it in there, and then you can have your supervisor or director review that and approve it. So it's right there instantaneously. You see it on your schedule. This can be an application on your phone, but also your supervisors have a way to look at it. So just think of the way that this helps, not only the dispatchers and call takers, but the time that it saves the supervisors. So at the end of the day, they can focus on more important things, like supporting their employees, or making sure that they're working on training or reviewing those calls that are important. So it's about, using the solutions and technology that helps us succeed and helps us, be positive in our mental health. So when we have the right people at the right place at the right time, that reduces burnout in itself. And it also ensures that we're providing successful outcomes to our citizens. And then the biggest, scariest solution of all, I think, in technology that a lot of people are having issues with embracing and are hesitant to, is that automation. It seems overwhelming. I like to tell people that when you go to any sort of technology that automates any of your processes, just to remind yourself that it can be as fast or as slow as you want it to be. Public safety isn't black and white. There's a lot of gray area. So it's understandable why supervisors want to know, if they have the ability to work with the automation and not against it. At the end of the day, like I mentioned again, and I'll keep repeating it so that people truly understand, technology is never going to replace our dispatchers and call takers. I would love to be able to come on a webinar or presentation and tell you, hey, my company's created a bot, a technology solution that can work 100% as a call taker and dispatcher and cover a Christmas shift for two of your call takers so they can have the day off. But the reality is, unfortunately, I'll never be able to do that because your job is so vital and what you do is so important. So to ease into this advanced technology of automation, I tell a lot of times I'll tell customers or agencies, hey, take it slow. Automate 50% of your calls. Automate maybe some of your non-emergency calls or your CPR calls, or partially automate them. So a lot of times, automated technology, you can go in and say, let's automate a CPR call. But I want to have a chance to go in there and also manually grade things that aren't black and white. So did they ask, are they breathing normally? But I want to know, did they ask, does it sound like they're gurgling or does it sound like they're snoring? So you can still go in and manually grade those as well. The biggest part of automating your processes is you're seeing that bigger picture. You're creating a true random sampling of calls. You're no longer cherry picking, high priority calls. You're seeing the full details, and your supervisors or review personnel don't have to spend so much time searching for those, which is what allows them to look at the larger picture and more calls. So you're able to actually go in there, set your parameters, and find those areas where you can let your staff know, hey, you're doing a good job. Because how many times have you've been in the seat and you get an email or your supervisor comes up to you and says, hey, let's go in the EMD office or let's go in the quality office, and you think to yourself, great, what did I do? And it shouldn't be like that. It should be like, you should know that there's going to be constructive feedback. Maybe you didn't do perfect on every call, but you should also have this sense of, hey, this might be something good because I know that 99% of the time I'm doing a great job, but I'm human and maybe I messed up once or twice. We need to show our employees that we know that they're great, that we appreciate what they do, because at the end of the day, these call takers and these dispatchers are coming into a job that most don't want to do, that's extremely stressful, and we don't want to make it more stressful. We want them to know that we appreciate them, that we see what they're doing, and that we support them in what they're doing as well. When you automate any process like your quality program or anything like your work time program, you can also automate those workflows. So you're reducing time for your supervisors, but you're also providing an open door for feedback and communication, which is only going to build that rapport between your teams, which is another important aspect of showing your teams to be confident and embrace the new technology that they're seeing. So if with automating those processes, when a call or anything like that gets reviewed and automatically reviewed, it goes into automated workflow. So you can set up different inboxes for your supervisors to have their employees' calls sent directly there. You're also, again, creating open communication so employees have a chance to ask their supervisors questions. A lot of time it's the employee going in there and only listening to the supervisor or the review personnel. This actually opens it up for the employee to say, hey, can I have more training on that? Or, hey, did you also listen to this part of the call where I did this, X, Y, and Z? So I think creating that type of relationship is important. The employee should have a say and also a voice in how they're getting their training and how they're getting their reviews as well. Some other sort of technology that goes hand in hand with a quality type program and recognizing our employees is performance management. I think this is important for, again, building those relationships between our supervisors and our team. We need some sort of transparency and confidence in building the technology that we have in our centers, and we do that by interacting more, by being seen, by showing our employees that they're seen as well. So there's technology out there that can track employee performance, and it's not necessarily always has to be used to identify a problem of a specific employee, but you can use it to identify trends easier without having to go again and search through every call that comes in, because nobody has time for that. There's going to be things that we miss, and there's going to be opportunities that are missed to recognize the employees again. So you're able to say, look at different parameters that you put in there. Maybe you want to know if night shift is doing better than day shift on certain calls, or maybe you want to recognize if a certain trainer is not doing well training employees. We actually had a customer that implemented something like performance management, and there were 5 call takers that weren't doing well on EMD calls. So if you didn't have some sort of technology to pinpoint different trends or where these issues were occurring, you might think, it was an employee issue with that specific call taker. But what it turned out to be was all those call takers actually had the same trainer. So it was actually a training issue. So they had to go back and see, how was this trainer training these employees, what was being missed, and how we can improve that as well. So it takes all of this data and throws it into a view that makes sense. So it shows you those performance hotspots and areas that might require attention, but again, shows you the areas where the employees are doing well. So again, we're human. There's always opportunities to miss things, especially in a high stress job. So we need to make sure our call takers and dispatchers, our supervisors, they have the time and availability to focus on the challenges of that day, the calls that are coming in, the citizens that are needing help. We need the technology in the background to deal with these sort of processes. That makes everybody's job easier. All right, and another technology solution that kind of goes into play with making our jobs easier. And again, this presentation of their PowerPoint is to go through different technology that's out there to kind of show you what is available. It's not saying you need all of these things. It's not saying these are the answers to all of your problems, but kind of just touching base on a few things that you might say, whoa, I didn't know that existed. Because that's how I was when I came over to the private sector. I said, hey, I had no idea we had all of this stuff. I wish that I did. And I know going to conferences and going to webinars like this, or some of the 911 communities that we've seen pop up on social media, and able to see these, what different centers are using and how they're benefiting from that is so important. So this is just another overview of that. So speech analytics is something that's out there. It's widely used in the commercial world, and we've seen it come over to the public safety world. You're able to use it and categorize call types. So you can see, on a specific day, if it's integrated with your CAD system, maybe see, how many accidents happened during this time period, or, how many domestic violences happened during the holiday, things like that. You can also show different relationships between topics or see how trends are changing over time. One way you could use this is if you're, tracking mental health or EDP calls, instead of having a person there to see how many of those calls you dealt with, or if you're utilizing, a CIT team or mental health team to handle the calls, or if you're getting a specific budget for specific calls, this is a great way to go in and look instead of having a position of someone that has to go manually search for all these things. You're able to type in like a keyword and find it pop up. You're also able to see, what resources were used. And again, it's about putting that into an easy to see view for our call takers and dispatchers and supervisors as well. So just another key piece to make our jobs easier. Again, a lot of times it's forgotten about that. An important piece of this technology is, and embracing this technology is making sure we're improving the job and the environment of those that are actually doing it, the ones that are under the headset. So reducing burnout, a lot of times, think about when someone calls 911, I think we've probably all had it. And you say, 911, where's your emergency? And the first thing they say is, this is not an emergency, but, and you just want to say, well, why did you call 911, right? Why are you calling me when especially frustrating when you just get off a call that is an emergency? if you had a CPR just before that, and then you answer 911 and it's someone, complaining that, and I did have a call like this once, complaining that they were getting a haircut and they got their bangs cut too short. And to think people use 911 for that, but it happens more frequently than those outside of 911 can imagine. We also have centers where call takers are answering both emergency and non-emergency calls. And of course, those 911 calls take priority. But what happens when a call taker picks up a non-emergency call of someone complaining about a car parked within 10 feet of a driveway? And they're on that call for 10, 15 minutes while this person complains and yells at them and they're trying to gather information. What happens to those 911 calls that are now coming in, especially in a center that's short staffed? Those calls are going to be on hold. And I've seen it in multiple centers. You have non-emergency calls on hold, but you also are starting to have those 911 calls on hold. So IVR and IVA is, when you call any type of customer service line and it says press 1 for blah, blah, blah. So this type of technology has improved so much. It's no longer, just pressing numbers. It can be by voice. Or you could say, is this about an accident that happened over an hour ago? Press 1. And maybe it goes into a line that's handled for accidents or investigations. Or is this about a pothole or a roadway hazard? And maybe it'll send that call over to Department of Transportation. Because we know citizens utilize non-emergency and emergency numbers as a go-to for everything. And a lot of times we have to reroute those calls to the correct resource, the correct agency to handle it. So why aren't we automating that with an IVA or IVR process? Why aren't we reducing the burnout of our employees from not having to handle calls that aren't emergency? Because this technology can do that. It can even connect to your CAD. Say someone calls in and presses one, this is about an accident that happened over an hour ago, no injuries. They can provide their name and phone number, maybe even a voice of, what happened, a sentence or two, and put in a CAD event automatically. So you could have someone do a callback if needed later, or it could go directly to an officer in that area that might handle it instead of having to come through the dispatch center, putting it in, typing it up when they could be handling a 911 call instead. So you're increasing efficiency, improving the job of your employees, but you're also providing callers with right help the first time and with less effort. So instead of transferring citizens multiple times to get them to where they need to be, this technology is recognizing where they need to be based on what they're saying and the information they're providing and send them there the first time. So it all goes back to retaining and supporting the employees. This was from 2019, the study, so I'm sure it's a lot higher now. But we know that 43% of our 911 dispatchers exhibited high levels of job burnout, and 24% of our dispatchers experienced PTSD. So we're using this technology to recognize the employees' efforts and support them. There's things out there like real-time agent assist. Again, used in the commercial world for decades. If you get a call and it hears certain words or it detects certain, certain tones in someone's voice, it can populate a screen that suggests questions to ask. Or if you think about it in a 911 world, it could say, what EMD card to use, or populate an automatic EMD card on your computer. You can also send an alert to a supervisor if it recognizes maybe you're handling a drowning call or CPR call. And maybe the protocol isn't to immediately go over and assist the employee, but it gives that supervisor an opportunity, again, an opportunity they may not have had without technology, to see when their employees are handling difficult calls and just take a note. And then maybe you can recognize trends. That employee suddenly starts calling out more frequently or starts, having more of a negative attitude. And maybe it's because they are dealing with some sort of mental health issue. And you can look back and say, hey, she actually handled a really hard call the other day. And I bet that's playing a key in how she's reacting now. So let me take the time to provide her with resources and help that she needs. Because too often, historically, until recently, those weren't seen. 911 telecommunicators weren't a part of the process of, recognizing difficult situations. We were just the person behind the phone. We weren't included in, all this mental health or the aspect of it as well. You're also able to provide training and learning opportunities. We shouldn't just discipline our call takers or dispatchers if they do something wrong. We should really look at ourselves and look at our agency and say, hey, what are we doing to prevent that? And how are we going to make sure that we provide the resources so that it doesn't happen again? And again, reducing burnout goes back to having the right people at the right place at the right time. So we're getting calls answered. You don't have someone that's, overworking themselves because there's not enough people there to support them. And you're also making sure that you're answering those calls efficiently and having services provided to the citizens efficiently as well. So I'll stay on this page for a while I talk a little bit more now that we've kind of gone over an overview of what type of technology is out there. And hopefully, again, it was only a few solutions. There's so much more. I was just talking to somebody with a different company the other day that is automating the tow process. It's something I never really thought about, but most centers, even where I was at, and I was actually talking to the director at Fairfax last month, and he said, as advanced as we are, we still are faxing tow requests, and a lot of centers are doing that. And why are we doing that when this technology is available? So now there's companies that are providing the ability to put that in the system automatically, reducing the time it takes to get a tow, but also those positions. If you have a specified tow position at your agency, let's free up that person and put them on a 911 call taking position now, because those tows are coming in automatically. So there's tons of technology that I didn't go over. I'm just hoping what I did kind of sparks your interest a little bit, maybe ignites a little bit of a fire in you to go out and see what's available, and what your agency needs or could use to be more successful. So using all that technology or some of that technology to create a total quality program, again, with a new definition of not just quality assurance, but a complete quality environment for our employees, and also for the citizens. So turn the quality and compliance strategy from being reactive to proactive, catching those things that we may not have seen without technology, and supporting the employees by recognizing their efforts, because we want to retain the people. We can never replace or satisfy a position that's lost by a dispatcher that decides to leave after 10 or 15 years. Even technology can't, replace the type of experience that those people have. So we need to keep them there. We need to keep good dispatchers in their seat, good call takers in their seat, and we need to make sure they're happy with their position as well. When we talk about embracing the technology, and how to make sure that we have, our team on board with us, there's a few different things that I think are important. Again, building that relationship between call takers and supervisors and the directors. A lot of times, directors, we need you down on the floor occasionally. We need to see that what we do, that you understand our job. Build that relationship so that the employees trust you. You're not just someone that is in an office that they never see, and we feel like you're making choices for us. Include your employees in the decision-making process. I know in my position, anytime I'm doing a presentation or a demo, I love when a supervisor or a director says, hey, I'm going to invite a few of my employees that actually do the job, because I want them to see this, because they're the ones at the end of the day that are using it. Please do that more, because I agree. They should have an input, and that just helps in the adoption and the embracing of this technology, is knowing that they had to say so, and that they had a chance to look at it and approve it because they're using it. Another good topic or way to help embrace it, I did a webinar with Brad Flanagan, and I think he was actually on this webinar as well recently. He actually has implemented, I think he said it was video to 911, and bringing in new technology not necessarily as a policy initially, but as a practice, right? So they can choose when they want to use video to 911 or when they don't. For a few months or a year, test it out, see if they like it, let them get more confident in it, and then get feedback from the employees on how it's working, what they think policy should be, and then start creating those policies or that foundation work. And I think that's a great approach. You're testing the waters. There's no issues with mistakes being made or if they don't want to use it right away. It also gives opportunity for maybe an employee starts using it, but another one's hesitant. And that hesitant employee looks over and says, wait, that's working really well for you. Or, you're getting a lot more details and it's making your job easier. Maybe I should try it. And kind of welcoming that new technology as well. And overall, I think it's about transparency and confidence in those decisions and in those key leaders and players that are leading the centers, the supervisors and the directors. A lot of times there's been technology that's failed, right? Or maybe too much technology at once. That's one that I always tell people to avoid. All this technology might seem great, especially if you're someone that really embraces new technology. But if you implement 2, 3, 4 things at once, new things at once, you're not giving your team time to really fully gain confidence in one of the solutions before they have to look at another one. So they're going to hate it all. They're going to say, this is too much at once. I don't want any of it. I want to go back to the old way. So bring in one thing. Or if you bring in 2 things, maybe implement one thing and say, hey, the second thing, you can use it if you want, but let's just practice it and see if you like it. And remind them that, again, they have a say. Let their feedback, bring in their feedback every tour maybe. Say, hey, we want to talk to each shift every 3 or 4 weeks. How do you like this? How's it working for you? What can we do to improve it and make sure that it is working for you? Have that training that's going to make them confident. Don't just throw it at them. And make sure that they have the ability to ask those questions about the technology that they're seeing. So there's multiple ways that we can allow our teams to embrace it. Again, the new people coming in is all they're going to know. But those of us that have been there a long time, this is a lot of change, and change is scary. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how great of a leader you are, change is always going to be scary. It's about making sure we're there to support the change and that we don't have any hiccups along the way. I mean, how many of us have updated even something like a CAD system and everything goes down, right? So sometimes when we think of technology, we think of that. We think of it making our jobs harder, when in reality, that isn't what it should do. It should make our jobs easier. And again, at the bottom of this, I said before in the beginning, because I didn't know if the chat here would be interactive or not, but please reach out to me if you have questions. I won't be here to give you a sales pitch or try to sell you one of my products. I mean, if you're interested, I'll send you to my boss. But really, I just like eliminating that fear of technology that people have in the 911 center, because I have the experience of both, being under the headset and from the other side of the headset. So I understand that hesitancy. So please reach out, ask me anything that you want. I provide my email, and in the next slide here, you can scan it, email me, contact me, ask any questions that you want. So overall, that's what I have for today. Let me go. Oh, it looks like there is a chat. Let me see if I move this over to close it out. Not sure if it'll show up. Oh, there we go. What do we have here in the chat? Oh, looks like it was from a link from Emily. Sorry about that. Okay. So hopefully that QR code worked. I'll send Emily and the Denise Amberly Foundation my email that they can post up with the recording in case you guys do have questions. Again, it's something that I'm passionate about. Hopefully I didn't bore you too much. I know technology can be a lot of information at once, especially if it's not something you're familiar with. But overall, I think that we're really headed in the right direction and changing the way that our 911 centers work. and we're changing it for the better, providing more mental health resources for our employees and reducing that burnout that should have been reduced so long ago. We're realizing the issues of it as well. So I want to thank Emily and the Denise Amberley Foundation for having me on. Hopefully I helped you guys embrace technology a little bit more.
Thank you so much for joining us this month too.
Yeah, of course.
And I did drop the link down in the chat for you guys to get your certificate for today's webinar. So I did that a little early, so you had some time to grab that. But I hope everybody has a great rest of their day, and we'll see you guys next month. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you guys for what you do.